Good afternoon, everyone, from the mobile studio setup. It's Dave Neal here with the Rush Hour podcast. I have all of your news for your Rush Hour ride home on this March 18th, 2025. On today's episode, more Bachelor content. I've got a little bit more to the Bachelor fantasy suite story, and also Rachel Kirkconnell discussing, does her ex, Matt James, have some regret after breaking up with her? They always do. And then we've got Dropkick Murphys getting drop kicked off of Twitter. I'll share how Elon Musk's triggered little platform banned him. So little for free speech. He bought the app for free speech. Now he's banning people he disagrees with. I'll share that story. And a reporter becomes the story. You never want to be the story as a reporter. That being Stephanie McNeil in her Glamour article. A content creator and investigative mommy sleuth has dug up stuff. Nothing bad, but just hypocritical stuff that you just got to be careful when you're coming from a position of authority and moral superiority. You got to be careful because we've all, we're all going to get called out before the world's over. So I got that story. And then Donna Bowling and I spoke yesterday, and I'm going to share a 5-minute clip from my behind the scenes GoPro interview. And then we'll discuss constitutional crisis. Yeah, that's right. Defying judges. What does this mean? I actually have some nice clips from international media because God knows what we think about it. But what do the other countries think about what's going on here? So I'll save that for the end. All these stories and more happening right now on The Rush. All right, before we get to the more serious conversations, let's have a little bit of fun with last night's fantasy suite. Bachelor Grant made it to his final 2. We reported that he said he was falling in love with Juliana, but I did not share his conversation with Latia. So here's Love to See It Pod summing up what went down with Latia. Have a listen.
This is the first I love you of the season.
Wild.
It is from the lead to a contestant, but also specifically right after she was like, I don't know about the fantasy suite, and I'm definitely not having sex with you. So what's going on here, buddy? Trying to lock this shit down or something?
Listen, I think they're dead accurate. I think that's when Grant's like, do I love you or do I just want to get laid? I mean, that sometimes you need a little clarity with which one is it. And speaking of clarity, we've got Rachel Kirkconnell discussing her breakup with our good pal Sarah Heeran from the Us Weekly podcast, right? And Rachel Kirkconnell, of course, unceremoniously broke up with Matt James in Japan, of all places. Long flight home. She literally broke up, and as she was on the flight heading home right before it took off, she saw that he shared this post, talking about their breakup, which was insane that you would do that when you're in a public relationship. You want to be unified, or else the audiences will pick it apart. Well, Rachel says maybe he's got some regrets, and wouldn't be surprised if he did. Have a listen to this.
Was that this kind of came out of nowhere and was a little abrupt, and now that you've had time to think about it or live in it, like, do you still feel that way? And do you think there was maybe any regret in a rash decision on his part, or just how you doing, girl?
I definitely think it was still out of nowhere. And I do think that whether there was either some regret on the breakup in the first place, or at least the way that it was handled, that's probably there, if I had to guess, or if I had to say without saying.
Wow. She goes, if I had to say without saying. Rachel, you just said it. You literally just said it. In order to say something without saying, you can't say it, but you said it. So you are saying it with saying. Oh, gosh, we love Rachel Kirkconnell. We do.
But I think that's part of the reason it makes it pretty sad still, is that it definitely didn't have to go down the way it did. And it's just sad to look back on now that, 4 years later, like, that's how things went out. So it's just definitely something to not dwell on, but something that I wonder if I'll always be, a little bummed out about. But I'm also like a very firm believer in thinking that it was a blessing in disguise and that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that needed to happen in my life. And again, I don't even know for what reason, but I'm trusting it, trusting the process, and I'm doing good and things are okay. So yeah, I think as sad as it is, happens for a reason.
I got to tell you, Rachel Kirkconnell's stock has never been higher. I've already declared us a Rachel Kirkconnell propaganda channel, but I just love what she's putting out there. I hope she finds this like beautiful, strong, awesome man who's wealthy, and I hope she finds whatever it is she's looking for, and her own career success too. Her relationship with Matt James ironically ended the same way her hang gliding ended, or her parachute. Remember when she was on? Remember when she did skydiving with Matt James on his season of The Bachelor, and she was tandem with this like really young skydive guy, and they had a hard landing. That's how the relationship ended. But listen, Rachel, Matt, I mean, come on. Not that I want to salvage their relationship, but any couple who's ever traveled internationally wanted to break up at one point or the other. You're at some, market in Phuket. You know what I mean? You got your bowels are hurting from trying new foods. Your lady's like, can you take an Instagram photo of me? And you're like, I'm literally breathing fire right now trying to survive. We've all been there. But of course, not all of us dumped our partner and sent him home on an international flight. I'm assuming she was also sitting economy, which is the worst. I mean, if you're going to get dumped, at least get them first class, right? Well, here's a first class story. Christine Quinn from Selling Sunset sharing that it's not always as good as it's marketed, right? A strange husband wouldn't let her leave home, crawled under her car. Well, I'm guessing this is a anxious attachment, maybe a little codependency. You should maybe go to some Coda Anonymous here, but that's not good. Now, of course, when you remember Selling Sunset, Christine Quinn had this rich husband, and she looked like she was living the dream. It's not always perfect, and money can't buy sanity. She claimed her estranged husband, Christian Dumonte, would shimmy under her car to block her from leaving their home. She says it caused her to miss work on Selling Sunset. Listen, you can have issues with your relationship. You can break up in Japan. You can have whatever, but don't stop somebody from leaving. If there's some emergency and there's a kid involved, I don't know. Maybe there's some scenario where you stop someone. Maybe they're drunk driving. I don't know. But if she's drunk driving, don't get under the car either. I don't have a scenario offhand that'll, to break the generalization here. But in most cases, it's better off to let someone go and not be a crazy person. But people are crazy. They're wounded. And this man, as rich and wealthy, is he a billionaire or multimillionaire? This relationship ended horribly. But again, this is her side of the story. I'm sure there's Ring camera footage if you wanted to refute it, but I'm going to go ahead and believe that she's probably telling the truth here. And I wish her all the best. All right. Well, how about this story? Let's go to Dropkick Murphys. All right. Coming up next, we've got Dropkick Murphys clarifying their Twitter suspension. We broke up with Elon Musk first. I'll have this story next. Well, I pride myself in trying to be fair. I really do. So I had prepared to share an article where Elon Musk suspended Dropkick Murphys, but they actually clarified what happened. So they were on stage doing some like anti-MAGA stuff, like kind of taking a nice political stance. They were obviously back in the news, St. Patrick's Day, like shipping up to Boston. Yeah. The Dropkick Murphys, shipping up to Boston. Okay. You guys get it, right? If you're from Boston, the Dropkick Murphys. They play that song at the end of every night of drinking. Well, here's their update. They basically said they left Twitter in 2022. And after they left Twitter, someone else stole or like took over their account. And then they filed a complaint and got the Dropkick Murphys account suspended. So what they're saying is he didn't fire us. We fired him. We already left in 2022. They actually say they only left when Elon Musk was only half a Nazi. So either way, there's an update to the story I was going to cover, which is that Elon Musk was silencing their account. Now, with that said, he has been known to silence people's accounts that question him. In fact, I'll be interviewing Taylor Lorenz today, and I believe she was suspended by Twitter when she confronted Elon Musk. So we'll hear from her mouth what that whole story was about. All right, well, let's go to Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively. It's messy out there. Culturally speaking, it's a fascinating conversation. That being, Glamour magazine made an article about the case of these mommy sleuths and how this right-wing media pipeline exists. And a lot of people that aren't in the right-wing media pipeline have said, this is absolutely ridiculous. What are you talking about? Well, the journalist then took to TikTok. We shared this all. You guys saw it, or Instagram, and shared, hey, I'm on salary, so I don't need to do this clickbaity BS like the content creators do. Which, again, she kind of has a point that like she is on salary, so But in the end, in order to keep her job, she knows, not to bite the hand that feeds, right? There's like an implicit sort of bias to obey the corporate overlords. As much as you think you're independent, you're not independent until you are, right? So with that said, now we have Without a Crystal Ball here, which is an Instagram or YouTuber. She does really good work. She gets into a beef with Stephanie McNeil. Stephanie McNeil's husband like chirps back at her, and she does a deep dive. So the big issue with Stephanie McNeil is, and I'll just read what is said here. Stephanie McNeil accused content creators that don't agree with Blake Lively of being alt-right. Yet Stephanie worked as news editor for Fox News, a conservative outlet, for 3 years as a news editor. Now you might argue, well, she worked there a decade ago. She worked there in 2011 to 2014. And look, by all means, I think here's my personal belief, and I've talked about this ad nauseum. Just because you work at Fox News doesn't make you right-wing. There's a few, like Jessica Tarlov, right? There's a few progressive voices that work there. Sure, they they keep them there as some sort of like DEI hire, their words, not mine. But it does exist. But I think what it comes down to is this: Stephanie McNeil, and those that want to lump people into a political category are on the wrong side of history, because people are fed up with that. There's plenty of left-leaning people that are fed up with the fact that they were silenced if they had an opinion about COVID. New York Times is coming out saying they got it wrong about COVID. They had the whole story wrong. And it's like so many people lost so much trust with media in the last several years because it was so easy to say, well, if you're not on our side, you're on the other side. And the other side became a side that was used to shame people, right? And we kind of see this play out with Stephanie McNeil, where she says, everyone's a she kind of generalizes. Everyone who's in this content creator world, there's so many people doing conspiracy theories and deep dives. And look, she's right to an extent, like that does exist, but there's also really good journalism that happens on YouTube. There's really good content creators that are independent media, and they're doing great work. And you have to be able to just sift through them and see who's credible, who's not. Because there's people I won't mention that are like grifting the hell out of this case. And then there's others that are like, hopefully I'm in that category, who are like trying to be super honest. And, a thumbnail might be clickbaity, but the content itself, it's like, we're trying to be honest. So here's the story. So here's what Crystal Without a Ball says. Apparently a journalist's political view is dependent upon which company they work for. Stephanie McNeil has been accusing digital content creators of waging a hate campaign against Blake Lively. In her article, she asserts that most of us are alt-right and misogynist. Yet Stephanie's resume on LinkedIn shows that she spent 3 years working for the conservative outlet Fox News. She then moved to BuzzFeed News before taking a job at Glamour magazine as a senior editor. And the funny thing to me about BuzzFeed, I never let this go. It is a company built on plagiarism. They stole all their content early on, then they received corporate money and scrubbed the content. But like the fact that they're like, in any position of morality is hilarious. Then they continue. It's interesting that she would attack creators and accuse them of being conservative when she worked on Fox News. I can assure Stephanie that at no time in my career have I worked for Fox News, nor have my political views shifted based upon my employment's media bias. However, Stephanie's views apparently are for sale to the highest bidder for a salary. Stephanie's husband, Brian, works for real estate agent Ryan Serhant. Ryan Serhant was recently featured as a keynote speaker along with Ryan Reynolds in Australia. No wonder she gets the concept of misogyny all wrong. But what do I know? I'm just a mommy sleuth. So I haven't vetted what Without a Crystal Ball is saying here. But I'm also not saying it's not true. I'm just sharing. I haven't vetted. Oh, well, but I think what happens online is people will share connective tissue to different things, and then the audience can decide to bridge that gap. It's the same thing when you tell a joke. The setup and the punchline are connected, and then you see how you get from point A to point B. That's the brain going, I get it. And right here, by saying Ryan worked with this other guy in Australia, shrug emoji, you're saying maybe they're connected. And maybe she's right. Maybe there is this bias where Stephanie McNeil has some sort of working relationship with Ryan Reynolds. I honestly don't know. But it is interesting because when you're a journalist and your money does come from corporate media, you have to live with the skeletons that exist within corporate media. Like if you're Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or any of those companies, a large portion of your budget comes from insurance companies. For health insurance. It comes from pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical industry owns cable news. How will they ever speak out against the thing that feeds them. And that's the world we live in. It would be a hit to my channel if we got rid of big pharma ads and healthcare ads and insurance ads. It would be a hit to my channel because they pay so much for those. But at the same time, that's the right thing to do. I'm not saying Glamour does this. I'm just saying they're part of that old guard that is not trusted by people. And these conversations they're having are not in good faith when they're cherry picking their evidence and lumping people into a corner. And now Stephanie McNeil is going to feel like she's on the right side of this story because she's going to feel like, geez, you proved my point. You're all crazy. And people aren't all crazy. But you'll find whatever point you want to make if you're on YouTube, on the internet. That's for sure. All right. Well, I've got a clip I wanted to share with you. I did Donna Bowling's podcast. You can go check that out on YouTube. I also did Heather McDonald's. It's getting amazing reviews. Thank you guys all so much. Here's a quick GoPro video of my chat with Donna. If you're listening to the audio only, you can go check out the video if you want to watch it or vice versa. But I wanted to just get some behind the scenes content for you while I'm traveling. So have a listen to this. All right, we have a special mobile segment here for the Rush Hour podcast, joined by content creator extraordinaire Donna Bowling. How are you?
Hello.
So I'm in her studio. Check out this amazing backdrop. This is high professional. Did you think we'd ever be here in the flesh, you and I?
Are you real?
I am. This is the real that you can touch my hair.
Daddy Sleuth.
What's it like making some friendships from this kind of crazy sort of peer community of covering the story?
Well, what's cool, and I was saying this yesterday, is that we support each other creators. We're like really kind of helping each other out, which I find is really nice.
Yeah, it's like we could be cutthroat and keep information from each other, but like, what's the point?
We're texting.
Yeah, we all have a race to get information out, but if you have a story that breaks, then I'll cover it, and vice versa. There's really no competition because the bandwidth is unlimited.
And what you cover, I cover the exact same thing, but a lot of people are covering the same thing, but like, we want to see everyone cover it because we all cover it differently.
Yeah, and we all have a different background. You come from the casting director background. Mm-hmm. Now, that is cutthroat because there's only so many roles to go around. So how does it differ coming from that world versus, being a content creator?
I think I just know the background of the industry, and I kind of just know the way Hollywood works and the kind of the behind the scenes side of it a little bit more of like the business affairs version and how things work behind the scenes,
What was the first job that got you into Hollywood?
That's So Raven.
As a casting
assistant.
Director? Okay, so your first job was a casting assistant. Mm-hmm. So you learned...
No, my first job actually was an intern for a talent manager.
But in the same world of database mm-hmm. of and how does that help you now other than just knowing some that behind the scenes?
You just know how actors operate, how deals go, how casting goes, how writers' rooms go, the on-set behavior. For this case, for the Blake Lively of it all, I think how behavior is on set. And then you can kind of say, what she's saying Justin Baldoni is doing is nothing compared to how some people have treated people on set.
Yeah, we've all been on situations where people get control and power and they don't get told no. Mm-hmm. And I think with Blake Lively, it's a situation where she had a director with a lesser pedigree, lesser experience, and she just didn't want to take cues from him. I think that was the initial trigger.
Of course. I mean, it very much seems like 100% a power dynamic gone wrong.
So did you ever think you would be in front of the camera when you got started? Obviously, podcasting wasn't really a thing. Tell me about this new world.
When I was 7 years old, I just did a class. I taught my sixth graders class about podcasting, how to start a podcast. And I said that when I was 7 years old, my mom got me a little radio, what's it called? A little tape recorder.
Right.
And I would walk around and I'd podcast and I would go I'd call my show Donna Diamond Show. And I always wanted to talk. I was a talker, but I never thought I was going to do a podcast like this. I just loved talking about it and I knew podcasting. And so I just did it for fun, but it took off.
And isn't it crazy with all of the technology that exists? If the only audio you have of a really good conversation is two people talking on an iPhone, that would still go viral. It's nice to have, and you have great production quality. That's all great. But when it comes down to it, we're such tribal sit around the fire and tell a story. Like, that's all it comes down to.
We just want good people and good conversation. I think it's all about personality. And it's all about good dialogue. Like some of my favorite podcasts don't even have to be video. I just want them to be interesting, good conversationalist.
Well, when it comes to stand-up comedy, albums, audio-only albums, I think are better than watching. Because it puts you in your imagination. It's not like when people say, "Oh, the book was better than the movie." You put yourself in the room of the act, and then any amount of visuals you come up with in your brain are more vibrant than whatever they could show you that person doing.
Totally.
And I think podcasting, it's like sitting on the park bench with somebody, catching them up, and that's all we kind of have been doing.
I love audiobooks. It's so funny. That is actually an interesting thing. I loved podcasts as a listener. Like, I listened to Kate Casey years ago, Serial. I would listen to Serial in 2000, I want to say 15, 14, when that came out. Like, I loved the art of audio way before video aspect.
And then the different styles, right? And then your style is now commentary. So we're going to be doing your podcast right now. So when everyone's listening, it should be live. Go check it out on YouTube, and then on the apps or just YouTube.
YouTube and apps.
There it is.
We're everywhere.
She's everywhere. All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me to this cool studio space.
I will always invite a daddy sleuth.
And in our final clip of the day, we have a question about the U.S. Constitution. Is it dead? Now, I don't want to instill any fear in people, but here is some international news. LBC kind of covering the story, saying, boy, it is a tough time, lots of growing pains. It's Simon Mark. He gives James O'Brien his reaction to Donald Trump's deportation row. We already covered this morning, this idea of like kicking out these Venezuelan gang members. And someone in my comment section said, I'm okay with them not giving due process to these gang members. And my response is, how do you know they're gang members without due process? What if they send me and call me a gang member and say, I've got the wrong tattoo? Well, where's the process to say that? You need to have the process and have the bandwidth to like actually have that evidence, or else it's just a mass front for just deporting innocent people. All right, have a listen.
Shameful efforts to derail the judiciary, and not just coming from the Department of Justice lawyers in the courtroom itself, but even coming from President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan.
I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
I don't care what the judges think. I mean, essentially the poster child slogan now for this administration. They are implementing Project 2025 to the letter, which is why a growing number of observers here think that the correct prism through which to view this government is not to think of this as a Republican administration. This is a far-right revolutionary government that is moving with tremendous rapidity to alter America and make it unrecognizable to those of us who have lived here for a long while and to all those of us who have observed and watched America over the last many years. If they continue to try and bulldoze the courts and simply ignore court orders, and there are now multiple court orders that they're ignoring on a variety of different issues, but this issue on Saturday was particularly egregious. At that point, America's constitutional order has died. The most shame.
I mean, and look, no lies are told. The judge said, turn the plane around. Look at it this way. The judge is dad, right? When dad says you're wrong, dad's right. And in our country, if you don't listen to dad, you just have a free-for-all. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but you got to understand, you can make it political all you want, but we have checks and balances. So the executive branch, the president, can't just do anything they want. Like what's a more serious thing, right? So they send these Venezuelans to some El Salvadorian prison, which is known for slave labor and all of this. And you go, yeah, but these are bad people. Where's the proof? Bring the proof, and then you go, well, I still think they should just be flat deported. Send them back to Venezuela. Why are you sending them to another prison? You know it's costing U.S. taxpayers $6 million to send this batch of people to that prison? Why are we doing that? What's the kickback? This privatization and like sort of economy of sending people to a different prison and then saying maybe we'll send American citizens. This is dangerous stuff. This isn't left versus right. This isn't Republican versus Democrat. It is changing the fabric of our country, the things that kept us all in order. And what's going to happen if, it's one thing to violate this court order, but what happens when they violate what the Supreme Court says? Who's going to come after them? what's going to happen next. We're here to cover it. But if you're just on the right and you think, oh, this is some crazy left-wing thing, this is uncharted territory. This is new stuff we're dealing with. And I'm going to try to get it right and cover it and expose it. And I hope you guys are around for the ride. All right. Well, I'll be back in the morning. Lots of content we will be sharing. Tomorrow morning, I'll tell you how my chat with Taylor Lorenz went. I'm sure it'll be very interesting. We'll see you then. I'm Dave Neal. This is The Rush.